Hi, welcome to Ask GMBN Tech, the weekly Q&A session. You ask the questions, we help you out with some answers. Get involved in the comments, use the hashtag Ask GMBN Tech, so we know which ones are comments and which ones are questions. Right, first one this week is from Phoenix MTB. I've got a mountain bike air fork and it's got settings for adjustment, but I'm lighter than the lightest weight setting. Do you have any recommendations for setting up? Thanks, Anna and Doddy. Do you know what? Anna's not here for this one. She'd have been a perfect person to ask because she's actually had the very same problems. Now, what Anna ended up doing was running her damping on the absolute minimal. So both in compression and rebound, she's winding the dials off completely so they weren't affecting anything. And she just about got the fork to work okay, but the problem was the damping wasn't working. So the first port of call would be to check that all your damping is off, to see how the fork responds, to see if you can get it light enough. And if it does work, then what you're probably going to need to do is what Anna did, and go to an independent suspension tuner. If you've got Fox fork, going to the Fox distributor would be the first port of call, for example. And there's many independents. I'm going to help you out and put a few of our local ones in the description underneath. And anyone in the comments, please jump in and give your favourite tuners in whichever country you're from, just so everyone can sort of spread the love a bit. And basically what they can do is revalve that suspension unit for you so it's a lighter compression tune, so essentially it will work better for your body weight. As far as the air spring goes though, do you know what, I don't know, if I'm completely honest, because I don't know how much you weigh, I don't know the model of fork, you've not really said anything about that, but again that's specifics that the suspension tuners will be able to deal with, and they can do it. Next up from Mad Mark. I've got a Vitus Mythique 27.5 inch, got it last year, and I want to make it more aggressive. I'm thinking about putting a 29-inch wheel in the front and a 26 on the rear, really? That way the BB will stay close to the original height. Yep, okay. What do you think of that idea? Nope. Will it be easy to find a 26-inch rim and spokes compatible with my rear hub? Yes. Okay, so you can do that. You could find a rim, you could find spokes, not a problem. Most bike shops will have a surplus of that stuff. Yes, tyres, you'll be able to get those as well. Probably be able to get them bargain price as well compared to bigger ones. However, first up, 26 and 29, it won't look good at all. And your bike, the geometry is not configured around that. So yeah, you're talking about trying to keep the bottom bracket height fairly similar. You're going to be slackening off the seat angle dramatically. You're putting a smaller rear wheel on the back, so it's not going to be as good through the rough stuff. A bigger wheel on the front. And also you've got to take into account that when you have mullet style setup bikes, so in case people are wondering what I'm talking about, that refers to putting a smaller wheel on the back. Typically you would only put a smaller wheel on the back, you wouldn't put a bigger one on the front. So putting a bigger one on the front, it's actually going to affect the sort of the length of the bike to a degree. Now on modern mountain bikes, the front centre is quite long, so that is really from the bottom bracket forwards to the fork axle there. Now, by putting a 29-inch front wheel on there, you're going to risk toe overlap. So that's how close your front wheel can be to your foot on the pedals there. You don't get that if you're going to just change the back end. So to be honest, I wouldn't do it. I'd be more inclined to go for a bigger front tyre. So if you've got a 2.4 on there, hop up to a 2.6, something like that. That's going to rake it back a little bit. And you could even get your suspension fork bumped up 10mm in travel just to further slacken it and make it more aggressive. It's a really good bike you've got there. I just don't want you to ruin the handling on that bike. And also, when you get the fork tuned like that, you can get the rear shock valved as well. So you can have the bike valved correctly for your riding style and your body weight, not just the base settings that you can have on that. So that would be what I would do. I definitely wouldn't be putting a smaller rear wheel and a bigger front wheel on there. I think you'll end up with a bit of a weird bike there. Next up from Cheap Shot 247. Is it okay to store my bike with the dropper post compressed, which is how it travels in the van, or should I extend the dropper post when not riding the bike, or does it not matter? Thanks in advance. Well, there's different schools of thought on this. Some people will say one and some will say the other. I've got a variety. Now at home, if I store my bikes upright, sometimes they're upright, sometimes they're on their wheels. If they're upright, I'll always push the post in. And I also actually remove my front wheels, even though there is room vertically, just to make the bike smaller form, so I've got a bit more floor space back. Now, it's never been a problem storing a bike with the seat post compressed. Now, some of the bikes, if for example they're not ridden for some time, they can feel a little sticky when you sort of release the post to full height. So treat it like a fork stanchion. So essentially it's a telescopic, it's a tube within a tube, and it's got a seal and it's got a bush to make it slide up and down. Exactly the same concept as your suspension fork. And what do you have to do to those to make them work well? Keep them clean, keep them lubricated. So the exact same thing. We've got videos on that on GMBN Tech, so there's going to be something hovering down there for you. Just keep it clean. Now, on some older posts where they had an IFP on the inside, You could, by doing this, on some of the ones that were prone to it, get an air swap. So some air would be on the wrong side of the IFP and the post would sort of bounce a bit at the top. Now that could happen to yours if it is an older post, and generally it will need a service if that's the case, but most modern posts don't tend to suffer from that anymore. So there you go. Phoenix MTB. I'm getting some new rims for my dirt jump bike. There's a lot of rims out there, but is there a difference between wider rims and thinner rims, durability wise and serviceability? Thanks from Phoenix. Okay, so generally speaking, a thinner rim could be slightly weaker, slightly more flexible than a bigger, thicker rim. Not always the case. Of course, you can get some weak, big rims and some very strong, thinner rims. But thinking about what you want a very strong, very stiff wheel that gives enough support for your tyre. Now, assuming on your dirt jump bike that you have like a semi-slick or something like that as your tyre on there, you're not going to suffer the tyre profile too much by going for a wider rim, but bear in mind the wider you go, the squarer the tyre can get. So if it has a shoulder tread, it could go from this profile out to this profile, so it's not going to feel good in the turns. If you've got a rounded tyre, not going to affect it too much. Now, a bigger rim, when I say that, I mean anything up to around 30mm internal. I probably wouldn't go any bigger than that because you're going to end up with a very, very stiff rear wheel on there. Provided it's built and tensioned by a really good, competent wheel builder, that is going to be a seriously strong wheel, and it will certainly be, on average, stronger than the equivalent with a thinner rim. You might get some weight difference, slightly heavier wheel, but given it's a dirt jump bike, you're going to be knocking about on it here and there, you're going to eject and the bike's going to, go tumbling away. That's when stuff gets damaged. So if you've got a nice strong wheel, happy days. I'd go for a bigger wheel any day on a dirt jump bike. None Legit Nation 2. I've got a new RockShox Recon RL fork a few months ago. It says in the manual that the fork should be serviced after every 50 hours. I didn't get it serviced and it still feels completely fine. I haven't had the opportunity to even take it off-road yet, so all the ride has been done on paved roads. Is it really necessary to get it serviced after every 50 hours if it feels completely fine? As mentioned, it's not even been taken off-road yet and I keep my bike clean. Okay, so just want to draw a line here and make sure there's no confusion. So when I say 50-hour service, it's not literally 50 hours as in like a couple of days, it's like every 50 hours of riding. So that, for some people, is a lot of riding, assuming that your ride might be, hour and a half, 2 hour ride. It's quite a lot of rides. And that is riding in conditions that could ingest stuff into the fork. Now, even if your fork is clean, you've got to consider that a telescopic fork, just by nature of the fact it's a tube within a tube going up and down, you're going to ingest muck and moisture into there, even if it looks visually clean. So that is really why you should be servicing them, because if any dirt or debris gets between those two sliding layers in the bush, it's okay if it damages the bush because that's replaceable, but if it damages your upper legs, that's called the stanchion tube, then that can be a very expensive repair because they're not always replaceable on their own, and it will mean having to replace the whole upper assembly, which is called the CSU, so that's a crown steerer upper, and that can be nearly half the price of a fork, not to mention the labour costs involved with getting that installed on there. So really the key is keeping them clean. So a 50-hour service, I think, take with a pinch of salt. Manufacturers will say that's what they recommend to keep the fork working in the optimal conditions, and also I guess kind of helps them get around customers that have done like 400 hours without servicing it, and they're like, well, we recommended that you did it after 50 hours. So you will have to use a bit of common sense. Riding on the road and keeping your bike clean, no problem, but bear in mind that you do get things like road salt, which can be really bad on the seals. So kind of up to you there. You can do a fairly easy lower leg service, which we've got many videos on. It's a fairly easy thing to achieve yourself, which essentially puts some lubricant back in and just gives them a quick clean. It doesn't interfere with the air tube, it doesn't interfere with the damper leg, literally just that lower leg sliding up and down. So you might want to have a look at that and give you a bit of understanding of what's going on the fork. But other than that, yeah, you're rolling the dice by not getting it serviced, so pinch of salt there. William Trudel. Hi Doddy, do you think that some manufacturers will ever produce MTB CVT transmissions? Okay, interesting. Just like my car where I don't feel the gear changes and it's all automatic. Maybe snowboard progressive transmissions. Well, it is kind of happening already in the eMTB world. So Shimano just released their latest system, which has got the latest version of the Di2 electronic shifting. It's also got free shift and auto shift on there. And the auto shift is automatic shifting. Now, I've not ridden this yet. I've not seen it in the wild, but I do know a man that has, and he's made a video all about it. So I'm just going to throw a little clip from Steve Jones on screen.
Now, free shift is the ability to change gear without pedaling. And I can think of a ton of situations where that would come in handy. Auto shift, on the other hand, is massively game changing. It keeps you in the right gear on any terrain.
And the link to that video will be in the description underneath. I would urge you to watch it because the tech like that is always going to come in on the e-bike side before it even filtrates towards us. Obviously it goes hand in hand with an e-bike motor. You can just see the benefits of that. And for any of you wondering about the auto shift, thinking, you know, I don't need that, it will be an option to turn it on or off and adjust the parameters of how it works. Either way, it's really cool tech that is coming to mountain bikes soon. Pretty cool stuff, that. I'll let you know if I ride it as well. I rode the ABS a while back and I was completely blown away by the capabilities of that. So I'd imagine auto shift definitely has something for everyone, even if you think that you won't want to, you know, manually change gear or whatever. James Revealer. I've always seen people talking about doing a quick bleed at the lever for Shimano hydraulic brakes. Doddy, you've done one. Yeah, I have. Is there a similar quick bleed I can do with a SRAM code brake when there's a small bit of squishiness, or do I have to do a full bleed procedure each time? Okay, so what he's talking about here, the quick bleed on the Shimano system, so you would normally have a rubber hose basically on the bottom end, like so the caliper end, and you have the top end, a little bucket that screws in. And you can leave that bucket open with the amount of fluid in and just flick the lever whilst your caliper end is closed. And if there's any air in the line, it tends to migrate to the top anyway, and it can come straight out. So that's known as a quick bleed. And you can do that with some other sort of mineral style brakes as well. Now with the SRAM system, in case you're not familiar, you tend to use syringes. Now if you're lucky enough, you've got the bleeding edge system on your bike, which I forget the year that they came in from, but the bleeding edge system where it locks into the caliper on one end with a syringe and uses a syringe at the lever. It's so fast, I'm not sure there'd be even a benefit to doing a quick lever bleed because it's so good and accurate. But that said, I mean, I've not done this, but I reckon you probably could still do one. So you'd have to get some fluid in the syringe, screw it into the bleed port on the lever, and you probably could do the same thing between the lever and the syringe to see if there's anything in the line there. Has anyone done a quick bleed on a SRAM style brake? Let us know in the comments. Just interested if it works. I've never felt the need personally, just because that whole system of SRAM is so easy to bleed. But hey, it'd be cool to know if anyone has made that work successfully. Thank you as always for the great questions. Keep them coming in. And don't forget, you can ask us stuff about bikes. You can ask us about things we've ridden, places we'd like to ride, any of that sort of stuff. Direct it to the channel, direct it to any other presenters. Don't forget, we've got Blake, Rich, Neil. Of course, we've got the EMBN crew as well. We're happy to get them in on a guest show. So you name it, get involved down there. And thank you as always for supporting us. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done it. Ta-ra.